Where does unemployment fit into all this?
Yeah, I think with inflation falling, we can talk about that a bit later too. I think the critical thing right now, and we heard the Treasurer Jim Chalmers talk about it recently. He's given a few press conferences in the last week or two, and he has said that the focus of economic policy, now he's independent, or the RBA is independent of him, we should emphasise, but the focus of policy now is not just getting inflation under control, it's ensuring that unemployment doesn't get too high. And just as a bit of context, in the latter part of 2022, so roughly 18 months ago, the unemployment rate got to 3.4%. Right, quite incredible. 3.4 is incredibly low. Now, it's generally trended up as the economy has slowed. So the numbers that came out on the unemployment rate a few weeks ago was 4.1. So again, not a bad result, but in economics, it's the momentum of economic indicators that matters. So 3.4 to 3.7 to 3.9 to 4.1. And with job ads coming down still, job vacancies coming down, the unemployment rate's going to go up more in the next few months.
Because you and I have talked about the NAIRU, the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment.
Correct.
Which is what it stands for. But and we've seen the modelling. The modelling is 4.5, which is RBA modelling. They expected that the rate at which inflation is no longer accelerating, that doesn't mean it's between 2 and 3%, but it's no longer accelerating, is they model that unemployment should be at 4.5%. As you and I have said many occasions before, they'll overshoot it because no one's going to land at 4.5%. No way. I mean, momentum usually makes you overshoot. They might be able to reduce interest rates next meeting. If they do that, maybe they won't overshoot. But where do you expect unemployment to end up? Because there's some people out there who are looking to change their job or what have you. What do you reckon about that?
I don't want to be too gloomy, but I'm getting more worried by the month, I suppose, as we get the monthly range of economic indicators coming through. I can't see a huge amount of reason to be optimistic about, the economy rebounding strongly, and therefore job creation comes back, and therefore the unemployment rate tops out at 4.5, which is the current RBA forecast. And as you said, it's NAIRU for their estimate. Their modelling suggests. So, as I said, we've already gone up 0.7 percentage points from 3.4 to 4.1.
Which actually is a lot.
Which is actually quite a lot,
If you had a blood count, if you went to the doctor and you got a blood count.
It's a big move.
And you've gone up by 0.7%, but they'd be saying, hang on, let's do some more investigation here.
It's more than the US, who's had more rate hikes in Australia, by the way. And it's because our mortgage rates are incredibly linked to variable rate, or predominantly variable rates.
As opposed to theirs fixed.
And they're fixed generally speaking. So we've hit our economy harder, arguably, with the interest rate hiking cycle than, say, the US. So I think when you look at the correlation, the linkage between things like job advertisements, because we do get good measures of those from Seek and Indeed, the big job recruiting companies. They've turned down somewhere between 20 and 25% from their peak. Demand for labour is falling. We've had the big increase in immigration. Now, we tend to focus on immigration in terms of housing demand, but it's also the supply of labour.
Totally. Well, that's the whole point of it.
They need a job.
But that's part of the problem. That's why we brought them in.
So I reckon, that's a long way of saying, I think 4.5 would be a very optimistic forecast for the unemployment rate. The risk is that we get near a 5% simply because the economy's sluggish and we've got this increasing pool of workers coming into the economy, and demand from the private sector in particular is falling.
So when we talk about 3.4% unemployment during or just post-COVID, 2022, but if you go back, let's say pre-COVID, or even go back a little bit beyond, let's say go back 5 years, 5% unemployment is not that bad.
That's true. I remember pre-COVID that 5%.
4.5% was considered brilliant.
Was great. Yes, 5% was okay, and if we got to 4.5, oops, we better be really careful here because that was considered to be the sign of an overheating economy.
Yeah, aggregate demand will increase as a result of such a low unemployment number.
Correct. So and in fact, this is the really fascinating thing. Whether it was the COVID pandemic that did it, or maybe it's the catch-up of technology, something that, we on a month-to-month basis, we productivity, artificial intelligence, machines doing stuff increasingly. You just got to look around how, we all function in our work life, in our social life and at home. Machines, technology, they're dominating everything, which is great, by the way, but you need less workers. And that's what businesses are doing. Just by the way, one of the good parts of the Australian economy is business investment. That's the one thing that's strong.
Still going well.
Still going well. We saw that within the GDP numbers. They've got a business investment component. It's up 8% in real terms, which is a good result. What does that mean? Firms are getting machinery and equipment and IT spend. They're spending up a lot of money because they can see, or they have to be competitive. Now, that also has the double-edged sword of reducing demand for labour. Like if I'm a business person and I can buy a truck and something to do that used to be done by
if I can write my
people.
ads, if I don't need an advertising agency anymore because I can write my ads using ChatGPT.
Correct. And correct. So machinery and that artificial intelligence means that demand for labour is going to be a little bit less anyway. And I think that might be causing, well, first of all, the unemployment rate to increase, but that structural lowering in unemployment is because it's dragged workers away from the labour-intensive parts of the economy. So where there's a shortage of labour still is nursing, aged care, healthcare, education. There's a shortage of teachers and all that sort of stuff because people are going to uni and TAFE and whatever and studying these like really sexy courses because I want to be an IT guru and all this other stuff. Pardon me, I don't understand exactly
Computer scientist.
Computer science. Thank you, Mark. I can't.
Data scientist.
Rather than becoming a teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is generally a trend. And so what that means is that that's where the unemployment rate is probably, the NAIRA is probably lower than the RBA was assuming a few years ago.
So let's say we do overshoot. It's not that bad, but it's not a good thing. We prefer no one to lose their job, you and I.
Correct.
Definitely. And
Yes.
government, no one wants to have anyone lose a job. But
Correct.
Unfortunately, these things do happen in those interest rate environments because the interest rate environment is actually designed to have that cause and effect. So if I did raise unemployment as one of the important factors because we're going to look at your board in a moment. But unemployment is to you and I is an important thing. Also, wage pressure as a result of low unemployment. Wage pressures are important because the more wages go up, the more employers or proprietors feel the need to maintain the margin, therefore put their prices up.
Correct.
Which is another cause of inflation sometimes, depending what the demand is.